Okay, hi folks, and welcome to the Rush Limbaugh program. Here we are on the EIB network, and right off the bat here, a note to affiliates. We are not going to go wall-to-wall coverage on the hearings. We're going to jip it. We're going to be jipping it significantly, but randomly, in and out, because it's boring, sadly, and it's going to be hit and miss. Our affiliates are going to be pressured to go wall-to-wall on this, and if they do, please understand that they've got to make that judgment. We are not here at the EIB network. And this is my decision. There's nobody I consult with on this other than me, and it's just it's going to be random as to when. We've got people monitoring it when I can't hear it. For example, right now, somebody will hint, get in the earpiece and say, "Hey, something's happening right now." I want to give you the assessment that I have of this so far to this point before we jump. We'll also get your phone calls on this. I know a lot of people want to weigh in. 800-282-2882 is the number. I know what the Republicans are trying to do. They're trying to make it look like they are not bullying this woman at all. They are not bullying. They are not going to treat her unfairly, and they're going to such great lengths to do this that they're not even questioning her. They've hired a prosecutor, a female prosecutor, sex crimes prosecutor, to come in and conduct questions. But it is wholly ineffective if you're looking for immediate points scored or immediate gain, because you cannot do what she's doing in 5-minute intervals. It just isn't possible. The way it's going, she's asking 5 minutes worth of procedural questions that are designed to point out Ballsy Ford's questionable and curious memory and memory lapses. And right as she gets going, the 5 minutes ends, and then the Democrats take over. And the Democrats simply say, "You're not making it up, right? You remember it enough to know that it happened to you. You've been deeply affected, but oh yes, oh yes, oh yes." And then it goes back to the Republicans, and the lawyer, the prosecutor, picks up where she left off 5 or 6 minutes prior. In the midst of all of this back and forth, the Democrats are getting their shots in on Grassley for his supposedly ineffective investigation, lack of taking it seriously. He then comes back and rebuts all of that and says they're wrong, he did it, and starts reciting every bit of behavior on behalf of the party committee majority to do the investigation. The problem here is, and I know what's, in addition to not trying to be appearing like a bully or being unfair, they also know this thing is going to go on all day. And this prosecutor is laying a foundation and a case to eventually be able to say in a summation that we just can't trust what the witness is saying because she doesn't remember enough. There are too many contradictory memories. There are too many things here. We couldn't go to court with this case, something of the sort. But in terms of this being a television event, that is going to be lost on everybody watching this. And it's a television event. The fact that it is going to determine the public reaction, which is going to be highly determinant in whether or not there is a vote on Kavanaugh tomorrow. Also, Kavanaugh has yet to appear. He will go last, and he will have a chance to refute all of this. And there is talk that he is indignant and angry and will portray that in his appearance. But the way this is happening here, since they agreed to 5-minute questions, 5-minute question periods, there's nothing. I mean, I don't think Grassley can change the rules in the middle of it because his 5 minutes are not effective, his 5-minute intervals. But you see, there's a different way that you question a hostile witness in a deposition, which is how the Republican prosecutor's treating this. She's treating this as a deposition and not a hearing. And it isn't a deposition. It is a hearing. And in a deposition, you ask open-ended questions because you're looking for information. In a hearing, you do the exact opposite. You ask leading questions because you're trying to make a point. You're trying to make points, bam, 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 bam. In a deposition, nobody ever sees it. You're preparing for trial. It's recorded on video in an office somewhere, never in a courtroom or never in public like this. Depositions are only rarely actually seen in toto. And it's to prepare for trial. This is the trial. This is, even though it's not, this is the moment of truth. There is no preparation for down the road here. And yet that is how this is being conducted. At a hearing, you don't ask, do you remember how you got home that day? You don't ask it that way. You ask, isn't it a fact that somebody had to drive you home after you say you were assaulted? Isn't it a fact that you can't or won't tell us who drove you home? The witness has to be put on the spot, but I think maybe it's entirely possible the Republicans have told the prosecutor, don't do that. We can't appear to be bullying her. We can't appear to be unfair. Questions like, so you're saying this traumatic event happened and you can't say what happened right afterward? You're saying this traumatic event happened, but you can't say where? You're saying this traumatic event happened, but you can't say when for certain? You won't tell us who drove you home and what you told that person right after this traumatic event? Those are the questions that this prosecutor, if this were in court, would be asking. But treating this as a deposition, i.e. the collection of witness evidence and testimony for later use, there isn't going to be any later use. Rachel Mitchell is the prosecutor's name. It's frustrating, folks. It's maddening to watch this. She asks 5 minutes of questions, but nobody knows what she's driving at unless you arrive at this with some information and knowledge beforehand. Well, we can't rely. I don't know how many people across the country are watching this. I would assume it's a lot. And it's a big stretch to assume that most everybody in the public watching already has a baseline of information so that her questioning would be understood in context. You can't do that this way. Despite how repulsive it might be or seem, this is theater. This is performance. All trials are, all hearings are. It's just to the extent that you want to go there or even admit to it is an aspect here. But with these little 5-minute periods of questions, nobody knows what she's driving at because she's asking open-ended questions in a very polite, and I don't want to offend you, schoolmarm kind of way. And right at the moment she starts to get someplace, bam, the 5 minutes are up and they got to go to the Democrat whose turn it is next. And people forget where she was. We come back and it's her turn again and she picks up right where she left off where nobody can remember that was. We're going to jip it. There's a big argument going on here about putting polygraph results into the record during Amy Klobuchar's time. Let's jip it and see what this is all about.
I'd like to shift gears and discuss the last several months.
Okay.
Oh, good. Here's the prosecutor.
In your statement, you said that on July 6th, you had a, quote, sense of urgency to relay the information to the Senate and the President. Did you contact either the Senate or the President on or before July 6th?
No, I did not. I did not know how to do that.
Okay.
She didn't know what exculpatory meant either, by the way.
July 6th, had
Dr.
you
Ford didn't know what
any
exculpatory
member of
meant.
Congress, and when I say
she had to have the
Congress,
word
I
defined
mean
for
the
her.
Senate or the House of Representatives, or any congressional staff members about your allegations?
No.
Yeah. Oh, that's it. Wait, folks.
Why did you contact the Washington Post then on July 6th?
So I was panicking because I knew the timeline was short for the decision.
Yeah.
And people were giving me advice on the beach.
Hello.
People who don't know about the processes, but they were giving me advice. And many people told me, you need to hire a lawyer. And I didn't do that. I didn't understand why I would need a lawyer.
What?
somebody said, call the New York Times, call the Washington Post,
Who?
put in an anonymous tip.
They're trying to tell us that this is not political activism, and look what she says she's being advised to
I
do.
felt like the best option was to try to do the civic route, which is to
Call the New York Times,
go
right.
to my congressperson, who happens to be Anna Eshoo. So I called her office.
And she said call
And
the
I
New York
also
Times.
put in the anonymous tip to the Washington Post.
Yes, she took me
And
into...
unfortunately, neither got back to me before the selection of the nominee.
Oh!
You testified that Congresswoman Eshoo's office contacted you on July 9th. Is that right?
Yes.
They contacted me the date that the nominee was announced, so that seems likely.
Had you talked about your allegations with anyone in her office before the date of July 9th?
I told the receptionist on the phone.
Okay. On
What is
July
that?
10th, you texted the Washington Post again, which was really the third time. Is that right?
Where's my cigar?
Second date, third time.
Let's see.
1 moment.
Correct.
And you texted, been advised to contact senators or New York Times, haven't heard back from Washington Post. Who
Yeah.
advised you to contact senators or the New York Times?
Beach friends,
Okay.
coming up with ideas of how I could try to get to people because people weren't responding to me very quickly. So very quickly they responded to that text for what unknown reason. That once I sent that encrypted text, they responded very quickly.
Did you contact the New York Times?
No,
Okay, why not?
I wasn't interested in pursuing the media route particularly.
What?
So I felt like one was enough. The Washington
You weren't
Post.
interested in the media,
I was
yet the
nervous
Washington...
about doing that. My preference was to talk with my congressperson.
Okay.
Wait a minute.
The Washington Post texted back that someone would get you in touch with a reporter. Did you subsequently talk to a reporter with the Washington Post?
Yes, under the encrypted app and off the record.
Okay. Who was that reporter?
Emma Brown.
Okay. The person who ultimately wrote the story on September 16th?
Correct.
Okay. Did you talk to any member of Congress, and again, remember, Congress includes the Senate or the House of Representatives, or any congressional staff members about your allegations between July 10th and July 30th, which was the date of your letter to Senator Feinstein?
Yes, I met with Congresswoman Eshoo's staff, and I think that's July 18th on the Wednesday, and then on the Friday I met with the Congresswoman herself.
Okay. When you met with her, did you meet with her alone, or did someone come with you?
I was alone. She had a staff person.
Okay.
Really
What did
getting
you
a
talk
lot of
about
ground
with
here.
Congresswoman Eshoo and her staff on July 18th and the 20th?
I described the night of the incident, and we spent time speaking about that. And I asked her what my options were in terms of going forward.
She didn't want to go
and How
forward.
to get that information relayed
She
forward.
didn't want to go
And
forward.
also talked to her about fears of whether this was confidential information, and she discussed the constituent confidentiality principle.
Constituent confidentiality principle.
Thank you, Chairman Grassley. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to submit for the record 5 articles, including one titled "Why
Okay,
Sexual Assault
we can jump out now. That's Chris Coons is going to take his time. So you see what I mean there. What did we learn about in that 5 minutes of questioning by the prosecutor? What was advanced? So I think what people are going to say is be patient. She's laying the groundwork. She's establishing that the witness is what? Not remembering, or is being very contradictory, or what have you. You know, the gut reaction here is that this isn't effective. Here's the thing to remember, though, folks, and I hope that this point is made throughout the day and when this is over. When this is over, every bit of what Dr. Ford is saying here will remain uncorroborated. every bit of it. When she's finished, there isn't a single witness that can or has corroborate what she's saying. In the interval between now and the end of this, Judge Kavanaugh will have his time before the committee. He'll have his opening statement. He'll have the questions, and the prosecutor will not be asking him any questions. She's just there to query Dr. Ford. So it's going to boil down to who you believe. It's going to boil down to who has more credibility. And Chris Wallace at Fox News has weighed in that he believes, I've already lost the number of the bite, but you've got that. I know. Wait. Yeah, here it is. This is Chris Wallace during the break, about half hour ago, his initial reaction to this.
So far, we've heard from 6 people. Rachel Mitchell 3 times for 3 senators, 3 Democratic senators speaking for themselves. This is a disaster for the Republicans. You're exactly right. She is treating this like a deposition, like a court hearing. She hasn't gotten anything from this woman. And meanwhile, the Democrats are landing haymakers. What do you remember most? I remember the laughter of the boys as they were laughing at my expense. To what degree of certainty do you know that it was Brett Kavanaugh? With 100% certainty.
There, so that's that. That reaction is probably pretty common throughout the media, and the reason is that there's so high expectations here. There isn't any corroborating evidence. The woman's got holes in the story. Her dates and times are unknown, unconfirmed, and yet none of that has been exposed. None of it. None of her flaws. None of the inaccuracies, inconsistencies in her story have yet been exposed. Some people think, you know what, this is about the senators ought to be asking the questions. Folks, it's 6 to 1, half dozen the other. If male Republican senators were bearing in and bearing down on her, you know what the reaction to that would be. They have decided, I'm sure that the overall atmosphere here is not going to be interpreted as unfair or the witness being bullied. Have to take a break, and we'll be back. Don't go away. I don't know whether this is studied and rehearsed or whether what we're getting is the real deal, but Christine Ballsy Ford comes across as very, very young, and even her speech pattern, she's what is called an up-talker. You know what an up-talker is? Some call it up-speak. People that speak this way end their sentences with an upward inflection. I think so, sir. Well, I don't know, but I was thinking about it when I did. It makes the speaker sound teenagerish, very, very young, uber nice. Vulnerable is the key word. Vulnerable and sensitive. When you're talking to somebody, some people say it's annoying, but as a speech pattern, it conveys innocence, youth, vulnerability, Valley Girl type thing. I don't know, Senator, but hope so. I think I did, but that's why I don't know if this is practiced or if it's the way that she speaks. Anyway, there's a lot of more observations here to make, but I've got a limited time to do so with the next break coming up, and we will continue to gyp the hearings as they proceed during the entire 3-hour program today. El Rushbo back after this. Broadcasting Network, great to have you here. Rush Limbaugh with combined coverage, our regularly scheduled program, and we are occasionally joining in progress the hearings being conducted in the Senate Judiciary Committee today. Richard Blumenthal is falling all over himself right now in his 5 minutes. The senator from Connecticut, I believe you. This is such a teachable moment. You're a great teacher, and I think you're very brave. You're so courageous. I remember when I lied to people about having served with valor in Vietnam, and I believed that lie for a long time until it was called out on me. But my voters don't care. I was elected anyway. Now, he didn't say that, but that's what I think when I'm watching the guy, because that's who he is. So it's hard to stay focused on what really matters here. And in some cases, it's hard to know what does matter. The purpose of this is to get beyond it so that there can be a vote on Kavanaugh tomorrow. Well, is what's happening here today going to move that forward and facilitate that or not? Now, in that regard, is it the television impact of this or the substance of this, assuming they're going to be different things, that will move the vote tomorrow? And that's going to be totally up to Grassley and how he interprets what all happened today. But so far, in her opening statement and in all of the preguntas that she has been asked and all the things she's answered, there isn't a shred of anything new, ladies and gentlemen. There is nothing new. There is not a new memory of anything of substance. There is not a new fact. There isn't a new recollection that would buttress something previously not quite remembered. There's none of that. Nothing new, nothing definitive. And at the end of it, none of it will have been corroborated. Not a single bit of what Dr. Ford's allegations to this day have been corroborated. From the beginning of this, every allegation she made has been uncorroborated. Democrats and media even tried to play a trick with that this week by saying, well, there's affidavits from 4 people who she told the story. Says that 4 people have corroborated what happened. No, they didn't corroborate what happened. They corroborated that she told them what happened. There isn't any corroboration for this whatsoever, and there isn't going to be. Does Brett Kavanaugh have a way of blowing all this up and questioning or having people begin to question Dr. Ford's assertions here and her credibility, as Justice Thomas did during the Anita Hill hearings? But, you know, I, like everybody else watching this with the random observations here, and her voice is one. She sounds very young. She didn't know what the word exculpatory meant. She appeared, I'm not making this up, she appeared not to know that the Senate would be the ones confirming the nominee and the Judiciary Committee would handle this. She also said that she didn't want to go to the media, but did, after Beach friends advised her to go to the Washington Post. So she sent this anonymous thing to the Washington Post. The Washington Post didn't react to it, which means they must not have thought much of it. And so when the Washington Post didn't react, then they said, well, why don't you try the New York Times? She was asked, well, did your congresswoman advise you to do this? No. Very quick with the answer no on that. And then the speech pattern. It's an odd speech pattern for an accomplished woman, not denying that it could be legit, but it's a speech pattern that garners sympathy. But you can't say that out loud like I just did. But I'm known for saying things you can't say. And again, it's the upspeak or the up-talker. There's a pattern. I mean, there are patterns of speech, and they have been clinically analyzed and categorized and named. And she comes off as an up-talker, ends sentences with an upward inflection, which is how young teenage girls come off. It makes the speaker sound uber nice and harmless, not aggressive, sensitive, vulnerable, and so forth. Like there's not a mean bone in her body. She even appears uncertain. Even her lawyers are turning pages for her. Her lawyers are covering the mic and conferring with her as to what to say and what's the correct answer, which is fine. I mean, that's why they're there. She got 4 of them there. You can see 2 of them. One of them is the Democrat activist Katz. The other one's Michael Bromwich, who tried to take Apple for as much as he could in the antitrust case involving iBooks. That's another story unrelated to this, other than who that guy is. She also admitted she's been in the East for a long time. Remember this? We were told that she's afraid of flying. But she has been in Delaware and New Hampshire in August for her vacation and so forth. We've got some more questioning here from the Republican prosecutor, so let's jip a bit of it and see what's happening here.
How to take a polygraph?
Never.
And I don't just mean countermeasures, but I mean just any sort of tips or anything like that.
No, I was scared of the test itself, but was comfortable that I could tell the information and the test would reveal whatever it was going to reveal. I didn't expect it to be as long as it was going to be, so it was a little bit stressful.
Have you ever given tips or advice to somebody who was looking to take a polygraph test?
Never.
Okay. Did you pay for the polygraph yourself?
I don't think so.
What?
Do you know who did pay for the polygraph?
Not yet, no.
New York Times, Washington Post lawyer?
You have the handwritten statement that you wrote out. Did anyone assist you in writing that statement?
No, but you can tell how anxious I was by the terrible handwriting.
Did you, we touched on it earlier, did you know that the committee has requested not only the charts from the polygraph test, but also any audio or video recording of the polygraph test?
No.
Were you audio and video recorded when you were taking that test?
Okay, so I remember being hooked up to a machine, like being placed onto my body, and being asked a lot of questions and
now, wait a minute.
Crying a lot. That's my primary memory of that test. I don't know. I know he took laborious detail into explaining what he was going to be doing, but
Are you kidding me?
Kind of what I was going to say and my fear about that. I wasn't listening to every detail about whether it was audio or video recorded.
Well, you were in a hotel room, right?
Correct.
Regular hotel room with a bed and bathroom?
No. It was a conference room. So I was sitting at a chair and he was behind me.
Did you note any cameras in the room?
Well, he had a computer set up, so I guess I assumed that he was somehow taping and recording me.
You just said you didn't think so.
You assumed you were being video and audio recorded.
Correct.
But you don't know for sure.
I don't know for sure.
Okay, thank you.
That's okay.
We're going to,
but she remembers. Take it down. Take it. She remembers that it was all over her body. What? You don't? That's exactly how she described Kavanaugh and Judge in the room, all over her body. The polygraph. She just remembers the guy, and she was reduced to tears. She's crying, and she just remembers it was all over her body. I'm just noticing speech patterns. A polygraph test. She reacted to a polygraph test in much the same way her description of what happened to her in that room is my only point. Let's take another brief timeout as we continue here on the EIB network. Don't go away.
Listen.
And the EIB network, 800-282-2882. Okay, time to get to your phones here. Just a couple of more things. I found it very strange that Dr. Ford did not know that the Senate committee had offered to come to her in California. She said she didn't understand that. That if she had known that she would have welcomed them to California. Of course, she was on vacation in much of August. She was in New Hampshire and where else? New Hampshire and I forget one other place. But she had to fly there. I mean, it's the East Coast she was at. She lives out in the left coast. Now, how come she didn't know that the committee had offered to fly out there? Did her lawyers not pass that on? She openly professed to being very confused. by that, like she was hearing it for the first time, that they had offered to fly out to see her since she didn't like to fly. It seemed like she didn't know it. Also, her manner of speaking, folks, is going to be a big obstacle. She's coming across as, with that up-talker, up-speak technique that she has. It comes across, she sounds like a very, very young girl, very innocent, very vulnerable, very sensitive, and wants to do the right thing. I think she felt like one odd thing too. She's a doctor. She's a doctorate in psychology. She acts like she's totally unfamiliar with polygraph, and she was reduced to crying during the polygraph, and said that she felt it was just all over her body, which was similar to how she described what happened to her in the room. Anyway, people have been waiting patiently on the phones to get in. They've taken a recess here, probably the luncheon recess. So we'll start in Lewiston, Idaho. This is Phil, and I'm glad you called, sir. What's your take on all this?
Hi, Rush. Thanks for taking my call.
Yes, sir.
Hey, I was struck when Dr. Ford mentioned running into Mark Judge at a grocery store several weeks after the incident and said that she said hello to him. And that struck me as really odd because I've talked to a lot of women in my life about bad encounters that they've had with men, whether it was a bad date, whether it was in a sexual type of a thing, whatever it was. Anytime they saw that individual later, it was either anger or a frown or I'm getting out of here as fast as I can. I don't want to be seen. But she talked about how she said hi to him and almost kind of indicated the friendliness they've had in the past, like she expected a conversation or something. And then he, looked pale and so forth. It just seemed really odd that if she was taken advantage of the way that she describes, that she would have reacted that way when she saw him.
It's a good point. I was watching and listening when that happened, and I didn't make that connection. But you're right. You're absolutely right. I mean, I've known people that didn't have any kind of trauma with people. They just dated them and broke up with them and see them someplace and don't want to go anywhere near them for some reason. It's very common. I've seen that. You're absolutely right. When you add trauma and abuse to it, that's a good observation. I'm glad you called. I realize many of you have been listening to the hearings wall to wall. That many of your affiliates have been carrying the hearing from the beginning. And I just want to share a couple of observations with you. I've already shared with the audience that was listening to the program before we get back to the phones. And that is to say that when we started a little bit after noon Eastern time today, the hearings have been going on for an hour. So I was struck by the Republican strategy here of having a female prosecutor take over the questioning for Republican senators. It seemed to be not what was called for. It seemed like that prosecutor was questioning Dr. Ford as though it was a deposition here in preparation for something later, like a trial or a hearing before a judge. And that's not what this is. This is not, there's no time for a deposition here. You got to get in, get it, and get out. It's a different way. You question a hostile witness in a deposition as opposed to a hearing. In a deposition, which is what this looks like, you ask open-ended questions because you're looking for information. And you might be trying to set up contradictions. You might be trying to, spread or lay what are called perjury traps. There isn't time for that here unless there's a grand strategy that will only reveal itself later in the day. In a hearing, which this is, you do ask leading questions because you are trying to make a point and you've got to do it quick. You got to get in there and get it. So in a hearing like this, you do not say, do you remember how you got home that day? Well, I think it was in a car. I do. You say instead, isn't it a fact that someone had driven you home after you say you were assaulted? Isn't it a fact that you can't or won't tell us who it was that drove you home? So you're saying, because the point would be in a hearing, so you're saying this traumatic event happened and you can't say what happened right afterward to somebody? You can't tell us who drove you home so we can go ask them what you said? You can't tell us what you said. No, my memory, but she's not being asked questions like that. She's being open-ended questions. So, do you remember how you got home? You won't tell us who drove you home, and what you told that person right after the traumatic event should be the question. So the Republican prosecutor, her name is Rachel Mitchell. She asked 5 minutes of questions, but nobody knows what she's driving at because they're open-ended. We don't know what notes she's taking. We don't know what she's balancing the answers against that she has as her baseline there. She's asking these open-ended questions almost in a friendly school marm kind of way, like Dr. Ford's been called to the principal's office. And by the time the prosecutor, Ms. Mitchell, gets going, by the time she starts to zero in on what may be some contradictions, her 5 minutes are up. And we're going to shift over to the next Democrat senator who says, I believe you. I believe you. Are you sure it was Kavanaugh? Yes. How much? 100%. 100%. I remember 100, but she doesn't remember anything else 100%. Anyway, the time is racing by here, my friends. You stick on the phones if you're on hold. We're coming to you. We'll get the calls in the monologue segment of the next hour. So hang on.
Rush Limbaugh.
Look, there could be another Republican strategy here, and it could be based on the fact that they believe there's no way that they're going to shake her credibility or make her look uncredible. Instead, they're going to rely on Kavanaugh so that at the end of the day, we have two credible witnesses. And questionable Republicans have to make a decision. Is there enough here to deny the guy? Who knows? It'll all be revealed as time goes on. And remember, Kavanaugh is yet to come, yet to appear. He will go last. And this is going to go on for much of the rest of the afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We, as a note to our affiliates, I know many of you are going wall to wall with this. We here at the EIB Network understand. We obviously will not. We are interspersing. We are joining it in progress here and there. Salient comments from me in real time as the hearings take place. I want to share just a few more observations with you, and then we get to your phones because they're in a lunch break right now. They'll come back probably in 20 minutes or so and resume. The media. I have done a quick survey during the break here, top of the hour, on the media. I don't care where you go. You go to Fox, you go to CNN, you go anywhere. They think that the Republicans are blowing it, that they're not accomplishing anything, that the prosecutor and this technique is a total waste of time, that the Democrats are hitting home run after home run after home run after home run. That is the media assessment. If you go to social media and you take a quick perusal there, you find a different picture. I found some Facebook people, and there's some serious discussions out there, people who believe, and these are not media people, this is just the American people watching us on TV, think that the prosecutor is scoring a lot of points because the prosecutor is catching Dr. Ford in a lot of inconsistencies, is exposing a lot of inconsistencies and a lot of what might be lies. The Dr. Ford is making her memory explicitly clear on a few things and on other things, not at all. That is an inconsistency. She does appear to remember what she wants to remember pretty well, but it's random. For example, she doesn't know who paid for her polygraph. I have never taken a polygraph. Mr. Snerdley, does anybody know how much they cost? I don't know how much a polygraph costs. I didn't have time to check during the break. You might assume they're relatively expensive, but maybe not. It was at an off-site location. It was in a hotel conference room near an airport. It was done secretly. She doesn't know who paid for it. Her description of it was unnerving. Her description of the polygraph was similar to her description of the assault. She was nervous and crying, and she described it as being all over her body, and that the polygraph official, the guy who took the she described him as being behind her. He was behind me. She felt very closed in this process. Now, the guy that did the polygraph was on Fox last night, said there were only 2 questions. Shannon Bream on Fox said that they had the polygraph expert on last, the guy who administered it, and there were only 2 questions. But she made it sound like it was a traumatic experience. She doesn't know who paid for it. No one's asking about that. There's a lot of questions that are not being asked here. One really curious thing to me is she said she didn't know that Senator Grassley had offered to send Judiciary Committee staff to California when they found out she's afraid of flying and couldn't come to Washington. She was invited. It was in the media. It was widely known that the committee had made every effort to get to her, including offering to fly out there. She claimed not to know that. She seemed to be genuinely surprised by that today. Now, why doesn't she know that? Did her lawyers not tell her that? Did her lawyers withhold the Senate Judiciary Committee offer from her? When this all came up, one of her attorneys jumped to the microphone, and the attorney Katz, the Democrat Soros-funded activist, covered Dr. Ford's microphone with her hand and would not let her answer this question. And then eventually they had these little powwows, and Dr. Ford said, I would have gladly welcomed you to my home if... I'm not... This is just how she speaks. You know me, I'm an impressionist here, folks. She has a speech pattern. I don't want to repeat myself on that. I've addressed it twice in the previous hour, but she has a definite speech pattern called up-talking, which emphasizes, you raise your tone on the last word of a sentence. It promotes vulnerability, youth. It's how young girls talk. Everything's open-ended, unsure. It's totally innocent. $200 to $800 for a typical 2-hour polygraph. Walmart sells a polygraph machine for $100. If you want the Mac Daddy, it's $121. Can you get the Mac Daddy at Walmart? Yeah, let me rephrase. Is the Mac Daddy of all polygraph machines available at Walmart, or is it? Well, okay, that's what I'm getting at. Some polygraph machines cost $2,000. Anyway, it's like an EKG machine. You can get an EKG machine on your watch now, for $400, but a real EKG machine is going to set you back thousands. I don't know. She didn't know. She professed not to know that the committee had offered to come to California. So I don't know if her lawyers didn't tell her because they didn't want. The whole point of all this has been delay. Here's another thing. A bunch of leftist media types are saying, does this woman look like a leftist hack? Does this woman look like somebody who's part of a leftist conspiracy who's trying to bring down a conservative? She doesn't come across that way at all. She does to me. I'm sorry, but that's exactly how she comes. This is who they are, if you ask me. But remember, I am a lifelong student of the left. I know them as well as they know themselves, and maybe I know them better because many of them are not honest about who and what they actually are. Many left-wing activists don't think they're left-wing. Many of them don't even think they're activists. There is no such thing as liberalism. They just are what's right. They are just what's normal. This hearing today does not change my perception that we on the right don't really know what we're up against. And it's not entirely our fault. But I do believe that liberalism, what everybody thinks it is, has kind of been taken over by what I think are people who have legitimate psychological disorders, and they have now sought the realm of politics to address those disorders and grievances. And so liberalism has basically become the home of people with psychological disorders and problems, and the Democrat Party has become their champion. And part and parcel of this is becoming a victim. And when you become a victim, nothing is ever your fault. And being a failure or being less than you can be or whatever, it's not your fault. It's somebody else's. There's always somebody to blame for what you aren't. Somebody to blame for what you are. Somebody to blame for what has happened to you. Somebody to blame for what hasn't happened to you. And it is the normalization of psychological disorders that is what we're up against here in many ways. This is a woman who has a doctorate in some kind of psychology, did not know what exculpatory means. She was being asked, a Democrat senator was setting her up for a Grand Slam home run. You realize coming forward that there could, with an FBI investigation, the Democrats are making a big deal over the fact there hasn't been one. And they're trying to make her look like she's very brave for asking for an FBI investigation, because you realize, Dr. Ford, that FBI investigation could produce evidence that would substantiate your case. Oh, yes, sir. And you're aware that an FBI investigation could also come up with exculpatory evidence. I'm sorry, Senator, I don't know what exculpatory. What is that? And I'm saying, how can that be? But then Ocasio-Cortez, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, has a degree in economics from Boston University and doesn't know the first thing about it. So let's grab the phones while we have some time here before the hearing resumes, and we'll start with Michelle in Pennsylvania. Hi, your turn. What do you think?
Well, I don't know where to start, Rush, and let me start by saying I am a recent convert to your show during the Obama years, and I thank you for what you do to enlighten us. I am a 52-year-old woman. In 1989, I was 23 years old, and I was the victim of a serious sexual assault. And when I say sexual assault, I mean rape. I have a problem with people saying sexual assault. Anyways, I don't forget one detail of what happened that New Year's Eve by no fault of my own. I remember the man's name. I remember what he looked like. I remember his eye color. I remember what he wore. I remember being trapped in that specific house and not being able to leave. So this woman, this doctor, this educated woman is just making my blood boil, and I don't want to pass judgment on her situation. I wasn't there, so I can't say. And I know everybody deals with trauma differently, but I find it very hard to believe that this educated, accomplished woman doesn't understand these questions, doesn't know her vocabulary. I just don't get it, and I'm very upset.
Let me ask you this, because I have a question for you, and this is what it's going to all come down to for everybody at the end of the day here. Do you believe, according to, after having listened to her, do you believe that something happened to her in a room, in a house, in around 1982, at around sometime after 6 o'clock at night, approximately, do you believe something happened to this woman?
Again, I don't want to pass judgment on another gal's situation, and I would have liked to have been able to see what was going on. I was just...
No, but I'm asking you to. This is because this is what these senators are going to have to decide. Did something happen to her? And then if the answer to that is yes, then, okay, do they believe her that it was Kavanaugh? She's unequivocal, 100%. Or are they going to believe Kavanaugh's denial later? Do you believe that she's being truthful, that something I'm not asking you now if Kavanaugh did it. Do you believe, based on the way she's told the story, and you can add your own experience in if you want, but you're just watching this today. Do you believe something happened to her as she describes it?
I think she thinks something happened to her, and I think something might have happened to her at some point in her life. But whether she is coming forth of her own volition or she's being wound up by political parties with an agenda, that's another affair. But I don't think in this country you cannot just assassinate a person's character without some kind of evidence. I can tell you that friends and family of mine could vouch for what happened to me back then. There were specific timelines. People knew what happened.
Because you told them.
Because I did. You're darn right I did. So something doesn't add up. So my question is to these senators, what is not adding up?
Well, it depends on which senators you talk to. But let me just answer your question. We most certainly can in America today. You're watching it happen. We most certainly can destroy a life. We can destroy a career. We can destroy exceptional achievement. We can destroy a future and a past, and we can destroy a family.
You can.
We're watching it happen. We can absolutely. The Democrats are more than willing to do that. That's what we're up against, and that's one of the reasons our people are hamstrung. It don't know quite how to deal with people who are willing to do that. Here, imagine this setup. We're up against people who have no compunction whatsoever about doing just that, and what is our reaction? We can't be seen as bullies. They can bully Kavanaugh all day, and they're going to. They're going to. They can embark on a political course of action that will result in Brett Kavanaugh's life, career, accomplishments, and achievements being wiped out and destroyed. His future, and who knows what it's going to do to his family. They can do that all day long. They're doing it. We are saying to ourselves, we got to be real careful because we can't appear to be unfair or bullying of the woman who is making it possible. You're absolutely right. There is no corroborating evidence for this. And there isn't going to be when this is over. She's offered nothing new. She's offered no new evidence, no new proof, no nothing. Nothing new, nothing's changed. And yet, tune to the media, and the media is convinced. Even our media, Fox News, it's over. It may as well be over. The Democrats are hitting grand slam home runs with every 5-minute segment. The Republicans are not even on the field. Got to take a break. Back after this. It'll be interesting to see if the Republicans on the committee are as frustrated as some of you are about how the morning has gone. It'll be interesting to see what strategery has been changed during the recess here, what procedural changes there might be. Now, Dr. Ford said something else that to me is contradictory. One of the people supposedly in the room when this assault happened was a friend of hers. The friend's name is Leland Kaiser. And Dr. Ford mentioned her again today as being there, but Kaiser remembers neither Kavanaugh nor the incident, and she's a friend. We've got time to squeeze in another call here. Pat in Chicago. You're next. Hello.
Hi, Rush. It's truly a great honor to speak with you.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
I heard everything that I needed to hear after her opening statement. I was writing down some notes as she was reading her opening statement.
Yeah.
She indicated that both Kavanaugh and Judge were, quote, inebriated and belligerent, and that they had been drinking prior to coming to this residence. She indicated she can sketch a floor plan, so she remembers that portion of it. She said she had one beer, which sounds very contrived by her attorneys because they didn't want to say she was drunk and she was a participant in it. So let's say she did have one beer, and Kavanaugh and Judge had been drinking. They obviously had a lot of alcohol in their system, and 30 minutes later she decides she's got to go to the bathroom, according to her. So they're obviously more drunk than they were when she got there. So they're beyond belligerent. They're beyond inebriated. So there's 4 or 5 people in there, whatever she determines, whichever way the wind's blowing, wherever she's writing the article. There's no music on downstairs. So in an unfamiliar house, she goes upstairs to find a bathroom. There was no bathroom on the first floor. There wasn't a half bath there. What was she doing, going to take a shower? she goes upstairs for some reason by herself, and these two belligerent and inebriated boys, they were making all kinds of racket, somehow snuck up behind her without her knowing and pushed her into a bedroom because she didn't turn around. She couldn't hear anything behind her with these boys that were just totally drunk and out of control, but somehow they made it up the steps behind her, and they were super quiet. So they push her into this bedroom. They push her down on the bed, and for some reason in this bedroom, there's music playing, according to her, when there's nobody in there. So the music isn't playing downstairs where the people are. The music's playing upstairs. And Kavanaugh cranks the music. So it's real loud, so when he puts his hand over her mouth, no one can hear her scream. Okay? So he's got this loud music up. She eventually gets away and runs into the bathroom that's off the bedroom, and she says she locks the door. Now, did she say, Kavanaugh, after this, since he's trying to rape her, he comes over and jiggles the handle? You know, he don't want to be shut down. Did he jiggle the handle? No, he didn't jiggle the handle. What did he do? He and Mark Judge went over, turned the music down so she could hear them not only...
Hold your thought. I got a break. Hold your thought. Right at that very moment. Hold your thought. Back to the phones we go. Pat in Chicago. Please resume where you were. Kavanaugh had just turned down the music in the bedroom, which was the only room in the house, apparently, during a party there was music on.
Right. After his attempted rape, which we're told by the professionals that rape is about power, rape is about control. So after he's stymied of raping this girl and she gets away from him, escapes, goes into the bedroom, or into the bathroom that's off the bedroom, locks the door. What does he do? Does he try and take away more power from her? No. He turns down the music so she can hear what's going on, so she knows that it's safe for her to come out. So, and she claims that she could hear them going down and bouncing off the walls. They weren't bouncing off the walls when they came up. They were stealthy. But when they went down, they were bouncing off the walls, which gave her an opportunity to escape. So she unlocks the bathroom door, and instead of immediately going over, closing the bedroom door and locking it, because you know it's the same lock, so if he could get through the bedroom door, he's going to be able to get through the bathroom door, and looking for a phone in the bedroom saying, hey, so-and-so, you brought me to this party. You dropped me off. I'm having some problems here with the guy. I need you to come pick me up right now. I don't feel safe. Does she do that? No. What does she do? She walks downstairs, and according to her testimony, knowing that she had to walk past them, walked outside. Now, Kavanaugh's this great athlete, right? So what prevented him from chasing her? Why would she go outside? Why would she open herself up to that? She's in a strange neighborhood. She can't even define where this house is. She goes outside not having any mode of transportation to take her anywhere that she wants to go. And she goes outside by herself. Did she take her friend with her? Where's Leland? Why didn't she say, Leland, he just tried to attack me. Stay with me until I get somewhere safe. Did she do that? No, she doesn't. And to piggyback off of what you said, after being freed and she's safe, wouldn't you think she would know what happened next after that life?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, picking up right where you left off. The thing that is really hard to believe is that she can't remember how she got away from there. She can't remember how she got home. I don't know how you would forget that. How would you? That's your escape. That's how you get to safety. That's how you rewrap yourself in your cocoon of security. She can't remember that. She would have had to have made decisions. Was she going to walk, catch a cab, call mom and dad, hitchhike? Ask somebody at the party, is there somebody who can drive me? We don't know. She can't tell us how she got out of there.
So in this case, you know, it's basically her witnesses, quote unquote. They will not corroborate what she's saying. Her best friend, this Leland, was her best friend, said it never happened. She was never there.
Right.
Now, in a case like this, let's say it's he said, she said. In a case like that, and it's 35 years old. In my book, plausibility determines credibility. And if anybody finds her story plausible, they're sick in the head.
Well, it's more than that. Is this, if this story, uncorroborated, no evidence, no witnesses, is this what you will use to disqualify a nominee about whom everything else in life we know? We know his achievements. We know his decisions. We know his writings. We know through 6 FBI investigations, we know everything there is to know about this guy except for this one tale, which can't be corroborated, for which there's no evidence. Are we going to keep a guy off the court for that? balancing this, what we're hearing today, against what we know about the rest of and the entirety of his life. Look, Pat, the hearing is resumed. I'm going to jip it here again. Mazie Hirono is now questioning the Dr. Ford. Thanks for the call, and let's pot it back up
and
here.
Yet she will persist in asking these questions, all to undermine the memory and basically the credibility of Dr. Ford. But we all know Dr. Ford's memory of the assault is very clear. Dr. Ford, the Republican prosecutor has asked you all kinds of questions about who you called and when, asking details that would be asked in a cross-examination of a witness in a criminal trial. But this is not a criminal proceeding. This is a confirmation proceeding. I think I know what
Wrong, Senator. You're running a criminal trial here.
You very plainly, Dr. Ford. Is there a political motivation for your coming forward with your account of the assault by Brett Kavanaugh?
No, and I'd like to reiterate that, again, I was trying to get the information to you while there was still a list of other,
thank you,
what looked like equally qualified candidates.
Okay.
And yet they're not here to testify. Dr. Ford, I'd like to join my colleagues who have thanked you for coming forward today. And I and we all admire you for what you're doing. And I understand why you have come forward. You wanted us and the American people to know what you knew about the character of the man we are considering for a lifetime appointment to the Supreme Court. I want to take a moment also to note the significant personal sacrifices you've made to come forward to share your traumatic experience with us and the American people. You've had to move, you've had death threats, all manner of basically re-victimization experiences have come your way.
I got to make a note about this, folks.
You have
Remember
inserted
to
the question of character
tell you
into this
something
nomination
right
and
on.
hopefully back into American life, and rightly so. We should be made to face the question of who it is we are putting in positions of power and decision-making in this country. We should look the question square in the face. Does character matter? Do our values, our real values about what is right and what is wrong,
does her character matter,
treat
Senator?
our fellow human beings with dignity and respect, do they matter anymore?
What about hers?
They do. And I believe the reaction we have seen to this coverage right now and your courage all over this country shows us that we're not alone. You're not alone.
What is this
that women and men all across America are disgusted and sick and tired of the way basic human decency has been driven from our public life. The president
Really?
is on tape to assaulting women. He separates
that's a
children
good
from
one.
their parents. He takes basic health care protections from those who need them most. He nominates and stands behind a man who stands credibly accused of a horrible act. I again want to thank you for coming forward. Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent that on 6 items consisting of various statements, letters, fact sheet, posts are inserted into the record.
Is that one request, or you want me to wait for 6?
Well, I have 6 separate items.
Okay.
They consist. I can go over them for you.
Okay, no.
I would like to.
Let me not interrupt you.
Okay.
Your request is accepted without objection.
Thank you. And I would like to read from an item that has already been entered into the record, but this is from a letter from the National Task Force to End Sexual and Domestic Violence. The letter states, and I quote this letter, "This moment has become a crucible. It's a test of our progress. Do we start by believing victims of sexual assault and treating them with dignity, or don't we? So far, Senate leaders are failing that test, prejudging the outcome of the hearing, sympathizing with her perpetrator, attacking her credibility. They send a message to every victim of sexual violence that their pain doesn't matter, that they do not deserve justice, and that for them, fair treatment is out of reach. This will only serve to drive victims into the shadows and further embolden abusers." Once again, Dr. Ford, thank you very much. This is a moment for our country. Mahalo.
Sure as hell is.
Senator, Ms. Mitchell for Senator Crapo.
Okay, let's see what happens here.
When we left off, we were still talking about the polygraph, and I believe you said it hasn't been paid for yet. Is that correct?
Let me put an end to this mystery. Her lawyers have paid for her polygraph.
As is routine.
As is routine.
Dr. Ford, do you expect the price of that polygraph to be passed on to you?
I'm not sure yet. I haven't taken a look at all of the costs involved in this. We've relocated now twice, so I haven't kept track of all of that paperwork, but I'm sure I have a lot of work to do to catch up on all of that later.
I get you have a lot going on, and you've had that for several months.
I don't know.
Is it your understanding that someone else is going to assist you with some of these fees, including the cost for your polygraph?
I'm aware that there's been several GoFundMe sites that I haven't had a chance to figure out how to manage those because I've never had one
And I'm sorry,
done for me.
several what?
GoFundMe sites that have raised money.
Prosecutor don't even know what it is.
Security detail. So I'm not even quite sure how to collect that money and how to distribute it yet.
Your lawyers will figure that out. Probably already have.
In your testimony this morning, you stated that Senator Feinstein sent you a letter on August 31st of this year. Is that right?
August 31st.
Gee, I don't remember. Lawyers are having to consult with. I'm really lost here. I don't. Let me see.
I sent her a letter on July 30th. And I don't have the date. I'd have to pull up my email to find out the date of her email to me saying that it was right before the hearings that she was going to maintain the confidentiality of the letter.
Say that again. It was till right before the hearings.
That's my memory, but I can look it up for you if you would like the exact date. I could pull it up on my email.
Oh, yeah. I want to make sure.
Counsel?
I want to make sure I understood what you said.
That document's been turned over to, in response to a request for documents. You have it.
Thank you, counsel. I want to make sure I understood what you said. Was it your understanding it was going to be kept confidential up until right before the hearing?
It was my understanding that it was going to be kept confidential, period.
Period? Okay. Between your polygraph on August the 7th and your receipt of the letter from Senator Feinstein, did you or anyone on your behalf speak to any member of Congress or congressional staff about these allegations?
Oh.
I personally did not.
So my question was, did you or anybody on your behalf?
What do you mean? Did someone speak for me?
Somebody that is working with you or helping you? Did somebody at your behest, on your behalf, speak to somebody in Congress or staff?
I'm not sure.
I don't know.
I'm not sure how those exchanges
How does that help me get rid of Kavanaugh? How does that? What does that have to do with getting rid of Kavanaugh?
Is it possible that somebody did?
I think so. It would be possible.
What does this have to do with getting rid of Kavanaugh?
It would be possible, but I don't know.
Okay.
Excuse me, you've asked her not to guess, and now you're asking her what's possible. So I think if you want to ask her what she knows, you should ask her what she knows.
This is just like a deposition. It's exactly what a deposition looks like, which is not what's called for here, but we'll stick with it, folks. We got to.
I don't understand.
I don't understand. How does this
Unless
help
there's a
get
legal
rid of the
reason for
judge?
not answering it on advice of your counsel.
So I don't totally understand the question, but I didn't speak with anyone during that time frame other than my counsel.
Okay. You've said repeatedly that you did not think that that letter that you wrote on July 30th was going to be released to the public. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And is it true that you did not authorize it to be released at any time?
Correct.
Okay. Besides your attorneys, did you provided that letter to Senator Feinstein, is that correct?
I provided her a letter on July 30th.
We're talking about the July 30th letter.
Okay.
Right.
And you provided that letter to Senator Feinstein, correct? Is that a yes?
Yes.
And you provided the letter to Representative Eshoo to deliver to Senator Feinstein?
Yes.
Besides those two individuals, Representative Eshoo and Senator Feinstein, and your attorneys, did you provide that letter to anyone else?
No.
Do you know how that letter became public?
No.
After that letter was made public or leaked, did you reach back out to the Washington Post?
This is painful. She doesn't have the slightest clue what's going on here, folks.
I reached out to the Washington, well, they were continuously reaching out to me, and I was not responding. But the time that I did respond and agree to do the sit down was once the reporters started showing up at my home and at my workplace.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Dr. Ford, thank you for being here.
Okay, wait. No, we're not. We're gonna bump out right now. Timing worked out perfectly. Be back here in just a second, folks. Don't go away.
In every corner of this world,
Rush.
Your name is a household name.
Limbaugh on the EIB network.
Rush Limbaugh, the EIB network, and the Limbaugh Institute. A very short segment here. Spartacus is doing the questioning. He's not really questioning Dr. Ford, who looks, she's in a side view, right? It looks like she's on the verge of tears here. Some people think she's stalling by acting like she doesn't understand these questions, stalling as to prevent as many questions being asked as possible. Cory Booker just said that Chris Coons said it too, that they're both getting overwhelmed with phone calls in their Senate offices from people who now realize that they have been raped or they are being sexually abused. And that Dr. Ford is awakening a new unit of America. She is inspiring with her courage numbers and numbers of people to finally come forward. And Spartacus and Chris Coons are saying this is a wonderful, wonderful thing here. Now, I have a story, I'm waiting for this. Boys more likely to be victims of teen dating violence than girls, according to a new study. You want to talk about phone calls? I can tell you this. I have been told by some ranking Republican staff people for members of the House and Senate that a lot of women are alarmed at all of this because of what it's doing to their sons. What this is maybe going to happen or be caused to happen to their sons, this characterization of boys that's taking place here. In other words, this may be backfiring, in a sense, on some people with women who don't like what's being done to their sons in this whole process. Okay, it has become clear what the Republican prosecutor is doing, trying to link Christine Ballsy Ford to left-wing Democrat hack activists in order to establish that all of this is a Democrat Party-sponsored effort. That's what she's trying. In no particular order here. Earlier on in the day, Dr. Ford kept referring to her beach friends. And what the hell are beach friends? Beach friends told her to do this. The beach friends told her to go to Washington Post. Beach friends said to the New York Times. Beach friends said get a lawyer. Beach friends said don't pay for it yourself. Beach friends. It turns out that her beach friends are her buddies in Santa Cruz, California. This woman who can't afford to pay lawyers has a home in Santa Cruz, California, and a home in Palo Alto, California. Those are two of the most highly expensive real estate areas in the country, not just California. You live in Santa Cruz, your buddies are beach buddies, your beach friends. Santa Cruz is the most radical left community in the country, maybe a smidgen. And if it isn't, it is. And everybody there is politically active radical left. It has now become clear to me what the Republican prosecutor is attempting to do here. The Republican prosecutor, his asking questions of Dr. Ford instead of Republican senators, is attempting to establish that Christine Ford has come forward because the Democrat Party has brought her forward. She is attempting to establish that she's not who she says she is. I mean, it may have happened, but that all of this is happening because the Democrat Party is behind it. Democrat Party political operatives and hacks are behind this. That's what the prosecutor is attempting to establish. Why, people say, what does this matter? Who paid for your lawyers? It's part of the attempt to establish. Remember who the audience for this is. The audience for this is a couple or three Republican senators, folks, not you and me. Well, you and me to a sense, but they're trying to establish that all of this is not an aggrieved woman who, because of her heart and her conscience, has come forward. She's being dragged forward and put in the public eye by the Democrat Party, who may have instigated this from the get-go. That's the attempt that is being made. Whether it's effective yet or not, I don't know. But I think that is one of the objectives, shall we say, of the woman conducting the interrogation or the interviews of Dr. Ford for Republican senators. Now, both of her lawyers that we see here, she's got four, they're two prominently on display here, Michael Bromwich and the Soros lawyer, that would be, I think, Deborah Katz or something. Anyway, they just admitted that they are both working pro bono. This woman has the money to pay them, but they're working pro bono. And Bromwich, are you ready for it, is also Andrew McCabe's lawyer. So this guy, one way or another, is determined to frustrate Donald Trump, to get Trump, one way or the other. Now, I personally, as a man of great decency and compassion, I am glad that Dr. Ford will not have to sell her two houses in Palo Alto and in Santa Fe in order to pay for her lawyers and legal bills. Unlike Michael Flynn and Michael Caputo have had to sell everything in order to pay their legal bills because of Robert Mueller's investigation, Dr. Ford here is free and clear because her lawyers are pro bono. Democrats continue to make a big deal out of the fact that there was no FBI investigation and that Kavanaugh has refused to call for one. Kavanaugh's undergone 6 FBI investigations. Let's rejoin as the Republican prosecutor is again querying the witness.
This is not a cognitive interview. Did anybody ever advise you from Senator Feinstein's office or from Representative Eshu's office to go get a forensic interview?
No.
Instead, you were advised to get an attorney and take a polygraph. Is that right?
Many people advised me to get an attorney. Once I had an attorney, my attorney and I discussed using the polygraph.
And instead of submitting to an interview in California, we're having a hearing here today in 5-minute increments. Is that right?
I agree that's what was agreed upon by the collegial group here.
Thank you. I have no further questions.
Okay, I have something to submit for the record. We received 3 statements under penalty of felony from 3 witnesses identified by Dr. Ford, Mark Judge, Leland Kaiser, and Patrick Smith. All 3 denied any knowledge of the incident or gathering described by Dr. Ford. Without objection, I'll enter in the record.
Mr. Chairman, I have something for the record as well. A number of letters from the witness's family, friends, including her husband.
Okay. I'll get to you just as soon as the ranking member.
Mr. Chairman, I have 3 letters addressed to both you and the ranking member, and I'd ask that they be entered into the record.
Without objection.
And it's also my understanding that Mr. Judge is not willing to come forward to answer our questions. As a result, we cannot test his memory or make any assessment of his thoughtfulness or character.
No, he just denied it under oath, that's all.
The failure to call him to testify is so very critical, and I hope the majority would reconsider that.
Yeah, right. Senator Blumenthal.
Mr. Chairman, I ask if you have sworn statements that you're submitting for the record, that we have those individuals come before us so that we can ask them questions about those statements. I think that the nature of this proceeding would be compromised if we lack an opportunity to ask them questions about sworn statements that will be part of the record. So, frankly, Mr. Chairman, I would object to entering them in the record.
Mr. Chairman?
Okay. Senator Whitehouse.
I have a number of letters that I would like to ask submitted to the record that relate to the importance of proper investigation by trained professionals in pulling these kind of investigations together, from the Leadership Conference on Civil and Human Rights, the National Women's Law Center, the National Organization for Women, and so forth.
Without objection to order, Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for our chairman. The statements that Senator Blumenthal talked about, those were statements taken by our majority staff.
They're already in the record.
Yes, sir, but those statements were taken by our majority staff?
Yes.
Did minority staff participate?
No.
Why not?
You'll have to ask them.
Well, were they instructed not to participate?
No.
They chose not to?
That's right.
If I may, Mr. Chairman.
And if I could, I still think I have the floor, Mr. Chairman.
Let's listen to Senator Feinstein.
Can we be excused?
I am
the witness is quite tired.
I'd like to, if you'd wait just a minute, I'd like to thank Dr. Ford.
All right.
In fact, we're going to continue this meeting, and we can, so let's just be nice to her. Dr. Ford, I can only speak as one of 21 senators here, but I thank you very much for your testimony. More importantly, for your bravery coming out and trying to answer our questions as best you could remember. Thank you very much. We'll adjourn for 45 minutes.
Well, I guess that's it for she's finished. That's it. That's it. The Democrats are flooding the zone with letters from this and that, claiming this didn't happen, that should happen. The Republicans stink. The Republicans are mean. The Republicans are racist. And the Democrats want to submit all those letters. The big deal here was Grassley announces it, and the Democrats immediately flooded the zone so everybody forgets it. But Grassley's got sworn affidavits from her 3 witnesses claiming it didn't happen. And they're sworn affidavits, as he said, under penalty of felony, meaning felony perjury. See you later. Here's the orange jumpsuit. Say goodbye to anybody that you care about because it's going to be a few years before you see them. They have signed these sworn affidavits. The incident didn't happen. They were not there. And one of them is her best friend, or at the time a good friend of hers, Leland Kaiser, who, by the way, as an added little bit of information, used to be married to Bob Beckel. Yeah, this ballsy Ford's, one of her best friends, was married to Bob Beckel for a few years. So she's, Leland Kaiser obviously has run in Democrat activist circles, and she is saying the incident didn't happen. Dr. Ford places her there. Dr. Ford says she was there in one of her more lucid moments, and he said, remember everything, but she does remember enough to put her there. Anyway, when Grassley entered those 3 into the record, that's when the Democrats lost their cookies and started introducing tiddlywinks and monopoly money and everything else into the record to try to cover it up. There's another lie that Blumenthal and all these Democrats are saying, and that is that Mark Judge has not testified. He has. The committee staff, the Senate Judiciary Committee staff, has interviewed Mark Judge. He has testified. Well, he has submitted the questions. Not testified, but he has been interviewed under oath by the Judiciary Committee staff. And Richard Blumenthal, who such a stranger to the truth anyway, is still out there lying about it. And he's not the only one. We had Senator Kamala Harris, who has been flooding Facebook with 3,600 ads, anti-Kavanaugh ads. She ended by saying that Ballsy has nothing to gain by doing this, which caused Ballsy to start tearing up. And never mind that she has a lot to gain. She's going to be a hero to all of her beach buddies out in Santa Cruz. The books, the movie deals, the Democrat, if Kavanaugh, well, it doesn't matter. If Kavanaugh is confirmed or not, this woman is now in Anita Hill's league, and she will be made a heroine. She will get book deals. An incident that she doesn't know where, when, or what will be written about in a 400-page memoir, for which she will be given a Hillary Clinton-type advance of $10 million. Because the publishers and everybody else will make the mistake of thinking the American people can't get enough of Christine Ford. So they're going to make just like they think they couldn't get enough of Hillary. All this is coming, and there's going to be the HBO movie. So what do you mean nothing to lose, nothing to gain? This is absolutely absurd. She's got everything in the world. She can quit her job. She doesn't have to pay her lawyers anything. So now we'll have to find out if anybody thought that the Republican prosecutor succeeded in linking Christine Ford to the Democrat Party and this whole thing as being nothing more than a Democrat Party strategic operation, which, folks, that's what it is. All of this today designed to cloud and make murky the issue. Just start with the timing of this. The fact that Kavanaugh has been nominated to several courts and the woman never popped up once. She pops up, supposedly doesn't want to be known, but is and doesn't seem to have a problem with it now. She shows up at the last moment after it looks like the Democrats have failed in their quest to keep Kavanaugh off the court. There's no question the Democrat Party is behind this. That's what they do. This is why I think there's going to be some kind of a backlash in November. And by the way, remember all of the times we had polling data on the midterms back in May and June, and I would caution everybody to remember the events that are going to shape the November elections haven't even happened yet. Well, this is one of those events. Now that it's happened, this is going to shape. It's going to have some impact on the November elections. We don't know yet what. We don't know if there's going to be a backlash against Democrats. By all rights, there should be. We don't know if there's going to be a backlash against Republicans for not stopping this, for not having the vote earlier, for falling prey to yet another Democrat stall technique. It's up for grabs right now as to what the outcome of this will be. By the way, Blumenthal, Richard Blumenthal, who lied about valorous service in Vietnam, objected to the affidavits of the three people named by Ford as not being at the incident. They weren't there. It didn't happen. As far as they know, it wasn't there. Blumenthal objected to those being put on the record without those three being brought forward in chains to be queried and interrogated about it. Grassley pointed out the Democrats refused to be at the committee when those affidavits were made. Grassley reminded you had a chance to talk to these people, and you didn't. The Democrats refused to be part of the interview with Judge or any of the other four witnesses. They have been interviewed by this committee. The Democrats chose not to show up and now lying to everybody about the fact they were left out of the process. They were not. I got to take a break. We'll do that and be right back after this. Lindsey Graham was just being interviewed by the media scrum following the break in the hearings. And he was fit to be tied over this. He said he didn't hear one thing to change anything, that she didn't corroborate anything. He didn't doubt anything happened to her. But Kavanaugh's unequivocal it didn't happen. He's got three witnesses that say they weren't there when Ford says that they were there. He made the point they want an FBI investigation. You couldn't even get a search warrant for this because she doesn't know where it happened. She doesn't know where it happened. She doesn't know precisely when it happened. She doesn't know how she got home when it was over. And he thought that the Republican prosecutor had done a good job. I don't think the Republican prosecutor had enough time to close her case. That's just me. We go back to the phones now to Washington. Catherine, you're next. I really appreciate your waiting. And hello.
Hi, how are you, Russ?
Fine and dandy. Thank you very much.
I was just calling in because I am similar to Christine Ford in some ways. I have a PhD. I went to a really excellent college. And 20 years ago, I was raped. But what is different about me is that there is no way I would ruin that man's life. I mean, I've forgiven him, and I've had to do that to get on with my life. And the idea that someone would say something just to ruin their life is just wrong.
This is why the Republican prosecutor was attempting to establish that Christine Ford is the product of a Democrat Party operation. Because the Democrat Party will destroy people to stop their opponents from winning. You're not a political person. You don't think this way. They do. This is exactly how they think. They are using her. She didn't come forward on her own. I don't care what anybody says. They're using her to get this done.
And it's so insulting to people that were actually raped, I have to say. And it's so insulting to people with any kind of human decency.
Well, we're not, again, I may be out on, this is not thin ice. We're not dealing with decency here. We are in the mire and muck of politics, where indecency is the objective of the Democrat Party whenever politics is involved. And that's why you're having trouble relating. You can't see yourself destroying the life of your rapist, even though some people wouldn't blame you.
No, you sound just like my husband, which is funny because he listens to you all the time. And, he says the same thing. He's like, you just don't get it. I can't try and explain to you how a liberal thinks. And that's why he's listened to your show for years, but I've recently started listening more so that I can be aware, because it's just so mind-blowing. If I could say anything.
I know exactly what you can't relate to it. And that's precisely because you're not cut from that cloth. Many people. Hang on, Catherine. I want to just say one more thing to you. Welcome back, and Catherine are coming back to you here in just a quick second. Folks, you always remember the first time you discovered something great. First time you went someplace you really loved. First time you got something or experienced something really special. And a lot of times those are things of a luxurious nature. Sleeping on a set of Boll and Branch sheets is right up there in the luxury department. Now, you might think that sounds funny, but I'm telling you it is. People that to whom a bed has sheets on it, and that's it. Sheets are sheets. You pick them up wherever you pick them up, and you go to bed, you fall asleep, you're unconscious, you get up, somebody hopefully makes the bed and ready for you the next time. Then, it's almost like having, regular wine from anywhere, a department store, a grocery store, and then you have a vintage Bordeaux. And then you find out what the wine snobs are all talking about. That happened to me. I wasn't a wine enthusiast or aficionado. I wanted somebody had a red or a white. I mean, I went to a restaurant once when I was in Pittsburgh. I'm in the early 20s. I've got a date. I'm trying to impress the babe. And I noticed sommelier. The name of the restaurant was Ben Gross. It was in Irwin, Pennsylvania. It's not there anymore, but it was rated really high in Gourmet magazine. My dad told me. So I walked in and I said, "Hey, Fritz," girl sitting across the table, "Fritz, what do you have? What's a really, really good red tonight?" He said, "For you, sir, the year you drink it." Meaning, you don't know enough to know. Here I am trying to impress this babe, and we all laughed about it. Then I was treated once, many years later, to a vintage Bordeaux, and I tasted the difference. And it's the same thing with these sheets. You sleep on your sheets, you don't think a thing about it, you hope they're clean, and then you go to a hotel where they've got these great sheets, or so, you experience them and you feel the difference. Well, Boll and Branch brings that kind of luxury to you at prices that are nowhere near what it would cost you in a department store or in a 4 or 5-star hotel suite. Boll and Branch, Boll and Branch. They use pure organic cotton to manufacture their sheets and all of their products. And it brings a softness and a feeling of luxury that truly is unique. It's sufficient. You will notice it. They are so certain you'll notice it that you've got a 30-day money-back guarantee, meaning you've got 30 days to sleep on these sheets. And if they don't meet the expectations I have raised here for you, you can send them back, and they will refund all of your money. Use my name when you make your first buy and get $50 off your first set. Once you discover them, you're going to make other purchases, too, from Boll and Branch, and you're going to start giving their sheets away as presents. They make great products, you'll see. Sheets, towels, bedding, blanket, now pillows. Wait till you experience Boll and Branch pillows. All the same standard of luxury. BOLL and branch.com. Use my name, $50 off. Catherine Washington, you're back. I want to share something with you. You admitted that your husband is telling you how political the left is or Democrats are, and you have trouble recognizing it. You're not alone there. I want to share with you maybe a way to help you understand just who they are, and a way to maybe help you logically spot it when you see it. My whole life, I have been struggling to find the way to tell people who are not as politically oriented as I am, or not political junkies, what liberalism is and who liberals are and why they are a danger. And because most people don't look at people's ideology, they judge other things. And I finally stumbled across, I've always had this in the back of my mind, but I've never been able to come up with the words. I was reading a little blurb by a columnist at National Review named Jim Garrity, and he nailed it. And it was not a big, long piece. It was almost kind of like a throwaway line. Essentially, he said that it struck him that what liberalism is, what the Democrat Party is people with psychological disorders who are now politicizing those disorders and blaming various institutions or America at large for their disorders. And that, if I'm telling you, that is, as far as I look at them, I think it's exactly right. And that's why so much of liberalism is tough to understand, because it defies logic. And people try to say, well, that's just who liberals are, but it doesn't make sense to you because it defies logic. But the way to give you an example, what is the Black Lives Matter movement? It's hatred of all cops. Well, right. The theory is these are people groups made up of people who may have had a bad experience with cops, who then maybe they've been affected by it one way or the other, and they've got some kind of disorder related to it, and they blow it up into being all cops are bad and all of America that supports authority is bad. But when they enter the political realm with it for solutions and answers is when people lose understanding. It's a, you've got a psychological disorder, deal with it somewhere else. It's not politics' responsibility to deal with all of these various problems that people have. And if you look at the constituency groups of the Democrat Party, it's one group after another, which they're not happy. They're constantly miserable. They
blame other people for their problems.
Oh, yeah, that's part of it. Victimology.
Yeah.
And so that to me nailed it. Even though it's one of those things where when I saw that characterization, bingo, it's what I've always thought, never was able to come up with the words myself to express it. I mean, look at the arguments we're having. I mean, we are shutting down states. We've got boycotts of states over the fact that some states wanted to pass a law saying that boys couldn't use the girls' bathroom and vice versa. We're in the midst of a hearing over whether or not somebody should be denied a seat in the court because he's been accused of sexual abuse, and yet the same people think it's okay for little boys and little girls to go in the same bathroom together because they have to accommodate the latest fad or cause, which is transgenderism and so forth. And it's things like militant feminism. It's irrational. These women are angry at something has happened to them in their lives. And their rage and anger, they take it out now on the country or on all men, or men in the powerful majority, which are white Christian men and so forth. And how do you deal with psychological disorders? You can't, when it enters the political arena, because psychological disorders, those are victims of something, and they are. So politics now has to make an accommodation for all of this, and there just isn't any common ground. And the Democrats are using all of this to win elections and to advance and change definitions of morality and normalcy and so forth. And you just try to look at things you don't understand, and rather than say, that's just the Democrats, no, there's a reason for it. And they are embracing and promoting these various psychological disorders as legitimate political causes. And these people in these groups are happy for the Democrats to take it on because the Democrats promise them they're going to fix it. The Democrats, fixing it means getting even with the people who did whatever was done to them. And so it becomes the politics of punishment and revenge and getting even with people who didn't do anything to anybody. Affirmative action. Look at, and not just with African Americans, affirmative action with women. People who have never mistreated anybody get punished by virtue of new policy that is enacted to appease the Democrat Party sponsoring this stuff. And it creates an ongoing war in the country. Groups of people end up being pitted against one another precisely because of all this. And that's why there isn't any common ground. And that's why there is no more crossing the aisle and cooperating and understanding and so forth, because the people on the left have no interest in cooperation or getting along. They want blood. They want vengeance. They want punishment for whoever it is that did whatever happened to them. And the Democrat Party is right there to make them think that they're going to get it done. It's sad. It really is. But look, Catherine, thank you. I'm glad you called. And it's not easy for you to call here and say what you said and to enter into this discussion. So, you know, they told Dr. Ford she was brave today for doing what she did. But so are you. I'm glad you called. You bet. Okay, quick timeout. We'll be back after this.
He makes it look.
Senator Lindsey Graham was on fire with the media after the hearings took their break after Dr. Ford was finished. He said, based on the information offered today, there's not even enough evidence to get a search warrant, let alone an arrest warrant, nor a conviction. Did I find her credible? What I found was there's no corroboration. There's not even a time or place. He's reminding everybody of the facts here, pointing out that after all of those hours, he doesn't know when it happened, he doesn't know where it happened, while all of those named deny it. I just got an email from a guy, a journalist friend. He says, I think Kavanaugh's toast. Don't you? I wrote back, no. I do not think Kavanaugh's toast. We didn't learn anything new. We still don't know what, when, where, why. The people involved that she named all deny it in a sworn affidavit. Brett Kavanaugh can deny all of this with far more certitude than she can assert it. You know, not knowing where or when supposedly makes it tough for Kavanaugh to deny it, because how do you say you were never at a place that she isn't even able to name? You watch. You watch. If this were me, under all these allegations, I would be livid at this. I'd be livid that anybody believed it. Given this many holes and given this lack of corroboration, this lack of evidence, I don't know where it happened. I don't know how I got home. I don't know when it was. I don't know what I told people afterwards. I've got a bunch of Democrat lawyers offering their services to me for free. We got the Democrat Party running this operation. It's a shame that the Republican prosecutor didn't pull that off. That's what she was trying to do. That didn't work. So it's up to Kavanaugh. And it's up to what 2 or 3 Republican senators think. And I definitely believe he can beat this back. I don't have any doubt that he can. Whether he will, this pressure-packed moment, but I think he can. Against this, Rush, it'd be a lot easier if she had named a place because he could prove it. He can already prove he wasn't in the general neighborhood with his calendars. Well, that didn't prove Rush. Well, she didn't have any either. It was the whole point. Do you think Kavanaugh should cry? No. Some people do. Ladies and gentlemen, despite all, he can beat this back. I firmly believe. I don't think anything's over yet. I'm not one of these people. I used to fall prey to my initial reactions of what I thought and felt after seeing something on TV. But I'm older and wiser and far more suspicious. And I live in a current set of beliefs that the American people are wiser than normal over what they see on television. I could be dead wrong about that, but I've got faith. People use every adjective in the book to describe what they send off to the Legacy Box. This is the company that uses the latest state-of-the-art equipment to digitize and transfer old pictures and video onto DVDs. It's priceless. It's irreplaceable. It's invaluable. And you can't watch it. You've got all these old memories stored away in the attic or somewhere. VHS, Super Betamax. You've got maybe slides. Super 8 movies. Can't watch this stuff. Or either your grandparents do. Or whatever. You can't watch it. But the notes that come with the thousands of incoming videotapes and old family films and countless pictures all describe the value of the memories contained. I mean, when people send Legacy Box the video and so forth, they're including notes about how important this stuff is. And the people at Legacy Box see it, and they're treating it with great respect because they know that when you send in precious family memories contained in all those tapes and films, their job is to transfer them to DVDs or computer thumb drives and return them as quickly as possible. They've done it now for some 400,000 American families. You make the time to gather all this stuff, the Super 8s, the slides, the still photos. You send them off to be digitized. You have a lot to look forward to. You're going to see movies and pictures of family members and family get-togethers from long ago that you remember happening, but not specifics. It's going to be great bringing all of those memories back to life. Here's what you do. Go online to legacybox.com/rush. That website and address will get you 40% off the price of Legacy Box service. So you tell them how much you have, and they'll send you the box that you fill up and FedEx back to them. And then the process starts 2 weeks. It's back to you, depending on how much you have. Legacybox.com/rush. Do we have time here? Yeah, let's get Russ here in Wappinger Falls, New York. Russ, I've got about 45 seconds, but I wanted to give you a shot here since you waited. What's happening? What's up?
Hey, Rush, I was listening to her testimony initially, and I wanted to believe her just to give her the benefit of the doubt until she got to the point in her testimony when she said that years before he was even, considered to be a Supreme Court justice, she was saying that she was concerned that he might be a Supreme Court justice. If that doesn't say setup, I don't know what does.
Yeah, I have a vague memory of that. Other people said they don't believe that if you run into one of your accusers at a grocery store years later that you walk up and say hi, which she said she did with Mark Judge.